Good evening. Welcome to the Oregon City Council regular meeting for August 28th, 2023. And the time is now 7:02, and we begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Ralston, you take a roll call vote or roll call of all councilmen present, please.
Mr. Davish?
Here.
Mr. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Paula? Here. Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Wallensack?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here. Also, present tonight's meeting is City Administrator Joe Major, Clerk of Council Cassie Ralston, Law Director Melissa Pepora, Public Safety Director Paul Roman, Chief of Police Brandon Began, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spangler, Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, Assistant Fire Chief Mark Mullins, and Finance Director Nick Roman. Council, first order of business this evening is the approval of the minutes from the August 14th, 2023 regular council meeting.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
thank you. I move to approve the minutes from the August 14th, 2023 regular meeting as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, the meeting minutes from August 14th, 2023 regular meeting have been approved. Tonight, council, because we did not have a committee of the whole meeting last week, we need to add items 113 through 121, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing none, items 113 through 121, 2023 have been added to this week's council agenda. The first item is being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Finance Director Nick Roman, item 113, and I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. These first five items 113 through 117, are all our annual ordinances to authorize the levying of assessments to be sent to the auditor of Lucas County to be placed on the tax duplicate. The first one is for unpaid water and sewer accounts that were delinquent at the end of 2022. There were 3 accounts for those. Is it all right if I just go through all 5 of them?
Yes, I prefer you do, yes.
And then the next one is for the cost of maintaining the drainage facilities and subdivisions around the city. The cost of the maintenance in 2022 was down slightly from 2021. This is just due to there being less repairs needed on the pumps and lower electricity usage. The next one is the cost for maintaining sanitary sewer lines in the city. This cost stayed the same at 28 cents per front foot. And that goes back to 1982. The next assessment is the cost of street lighting. There was a small increase in 2022. This is due to 3 new developments that went up in the city with additional street lights. The last one is for unpaid invoices in 2022 for the cutting of noxious weeds. So anybody who had their overgrown lawn and we had to go out and cut it. There were a total of 18 properties with unpaid invoices. In 2021, there were only 10. So that went up a little bit there as well. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, do you have any questions regarding items 113 through 117?
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
just a brief question if I could, Mr. Roman, and the only reason I'm going to ask you this is just because I have a number of residents ask me specifically with the street lights and the water and the certain subdivisions that are out there where we're paying for the pumps, the maintenance and operation of the pumps that are there. So it'd be items 114. How is that assessed? Is it by frontage? Is it by area of the lot? Could you explain that just so we have that on the record? I think that would answer some questions.
Yes, so both of those are by the front foot. Obviously, the neighborhoods, it's only per neighborhood. The street lights are done based on the cost of the pole, and then the variable rate for all of the polls in the city.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Question I have, Mr. Roman, I don't know if you can answer this or if Paul can answer this. I've brought this up before. The pump for the Park Place pump station is always by far the most expensive pump. And I guess I'm curious as to, the pump is continuously breaking down. I thought we replaced it at one point, and I don't understand why that pump is always an issue.
And well, Mr. President, just to answer your question, yeah, in Park Place, that pump station, we've always had trouble. I don't know if it's from the original design. It is a deep, and I know that a lot of these pumps are called grinder pumps. They're not very efficient. But I just think with this particular pump station, we've had trouble now. So a year ago, we replaced one pump. I know Keith ordered a new pump this year and then also purchased a spare. And so that'll be on the assessment for next year. No, you know, it's hard to say, to be honest, Mr. Zale, as to what haunts that pump station. Sometimes debris will get into a storm sewer. I know that with the last installation, there were some piping changes, check valves that had reached their life, and that was an added expense. So it wasn't all just the pump itself. You know, it does have piping and, you know, valves and so on. But no, I think it's just from the original design. All the other pump stations have worked very well. And we do have pump replacements. Hickory Shores, we did some pump replacements in-house, and we did save some money doing that in-house. So, and we do this work in-house as well, so on Park Place. But yeah, it's something we can look at. I think if you went to a whole new replacement, maybe that's something we can look at. That gets assessed as well. And that's something we looked at for Hickory, or not Hickory Shores, for Heritage Estates. And that's what I meant earlier. But full replacement, I think for doing the work in-house, probably bought an extra 10 to 15 years of life, and we saved a lot of money by not doing a full replacement. So it just depends. But yeah, I can talk with Mr. Henninger and look at something else that we can do. Obviously, we have to keep them running at all times because you never know when you're going to have an event.
Right, right. I guess the question I have for you, and not that I don't completely understand, but when you say it must be the design
From the original.
I mean, why is that pump station design so much different? Is it so much different than the other pump station designs? And how so?
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
looking at our notes, it does look like there's two separate pumps in the neighborhood. So there's a north and a south. So it looks like the north one went out last year or 2 years ago, and then the south one went out.
There's two, yeah, there's two pumps with every pump station, just, you know, and you alternate them to give them more life, okay?
Right.
And there are some events where they run at the same time because it's just trying to keep up. But yeah, you alternate it to give it life. But no, in that sense, it's the same design as others. I do know that with your system, it is a deep system. And as to whether it collects more sediment or debris, you know, sometimes it's luck with these events as to what gets into the storm system, unfortunately. And that can affect it as well. So, but yeah, Park Place we've had trouble with.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any other questions or comments regarding items 113 through 117?
Mr. President.
Mr. Drake?
Okay, thank you. I don't know if this will be for Mr. Roman or Joel. On the obnoxious weed item 117, I know that I've had numerous complaints and I've dealt with building and zoning about it, and they've been sending the notices out and taking care of it. The only question I have is some of the people that make the complaints, you know, they'll go out, cut the grass, you know, do a little here or there, whatever. The issue they have is there's a house in the Eastmoreland area along the fence. The weeds are getting so bad, they're turning or big that they're like turning into trees. So I didn't know if it's written up that they just go in and mow the grass, or you know, if it takes them an extra half hour, hour to, you know, trim it up. And I know it's not going to look like a golf course, but it's
Yeah.
not good when your neighbors' yards are getting filled with wild trees.
Right, it's not finish mowing, it's usually just knock it down.
Mhm.
Hopefully the homeowner then comes out, or whoever owns the property owner comes out and pays it and starts maintaining it themselves. But I mean, we know that's not the case in a lot of cases. So let me take a look at that.
Okay.
I'll take a look at that particular property in specific
Mhm.
and start looking at our policy on how we mow the nuisance yards. That way, we're not mowing golf courses, but at least we can do more than just mow.
Right.
We abate nuisances. So whatever that means to, what that means to one person could mean to another. I mean, we have to abate the nuisance. That's what we have to do. So if that's not being done, I'll take a look into that and take a look at our policy and how we need to correct, mowing along fences or knocking down weeds that are along fences or spraying or, some tree, noxious weeds and tree clearing is another item too. So it just depends on what we can and can't do and what we should be doing. So it sounds like in this case in particular, we're not doing what we should be doing, which is, hitting up between the fence lines, because then it just becomes damaging for not just for the neighbor as well as the
Right.
homeowner that's not taking care of their property.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank
I
you,
will look
Mr.
into that.
President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Major. Council, any other questions or comments? on this item? Hearing none, I will assign item 113, 2023 as ordinance 113, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
Levying special assessments for the cost of unpaid water and sewer accounts in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2022 in the amount of $2,227.37.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 113 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallenczak. Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Ms. Ralston, would you take a roll call vote of council on ordinance 113?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 113, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next, I will assign item 114, 2023 as ordinance 114, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read in the record.
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of maintaining the drainage facilities in Heritage Estates, Park Place, Hickory Shores, Cardinal Estates, The Vineyard, The Drake, Foxgate, Bay Meadows, Park Parchelon, my apologies, Haley Hollow 1 and Haley Hollow 2 subdivisions for the year 2022 for a total amount of $17,061.12.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 114 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council on ordinance 114, 2023?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 114, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item, 115, I will assign as ordinance 115, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it in the record.
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of maintaining the sanitary sewer lines in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2022 in the amount of $197,241.10.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 115 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Ralston, you take a roll call vote of council, please.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 115, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next, I will assign item 116, 2023 as ordinance 116, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of lighting the streets and public ways in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2022 in the amount of $305,484.72.
Council. Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 116 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Ralston, would you take a roll call vote of the council?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 116, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next, I will assign item 117, 2023 as ordinance 117, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of lighting the streets and public ways in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2022 in the amount of $305,484.72.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 116 of 2023 as an emergency. Or I'm sorry, removing the emergency piece.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Ralston, we take a roll call vote of the council, please.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 117, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item for this evening is item 118, 2023, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Finance Director Nick Roman, and I will defer to Mr. Roman.
No, we just voted on it. Okay, so what Mr. Roman.
We didn't do one. 117. No, we need to do that.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Ralston, would you please read ordinance 117, 2023 into the record?
Levying special assessments for the cutting of noxious weeds in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2022 in the amount of $8,231.56.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 117 of 2023.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Ms. Ralston, you take a roll call vote. Council.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. 117, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Item 118, 2023 is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and our Finance Director Nick Roman. And I will defer to Mr. Roman on item 118.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance would authorize us to sign an agreement with Spyglass LLC to conduct a telecommunications service audit. Spyglass is what is considered a technology cost auditing firm. What they'll do is they'll use their software to analyze our bills
I didn't,
over the life of their contracts and look to see if we've been overcharged on any bill, specifically in the taxes and surcharges within that little area. They will also try to find if we are paying for any services that we no longer use. And then they'll also use their data that they've collected over between their 13,000 plus clients to see if they can find us any cheaper rates. There's no upfront cost to perform the audit. They'll only invoice us if they find any savings for us. And that's laid out in the agreement, what the cost would be.
thank you, Mr. Roman. Can you think of any services right now that you think right now we don't use that we?
Well, so actually, since we met with them, JT was able to try to go through some of our cell phone bills, and we did find one line that hasn't been used in about a year. He's still trying to figure out if we will need that in the future or not. But so that is one that we will eliminate before we had signed the agreement, so we didn't owe them anything. But it is possible that there are some smaller lines out there that have just been sitting and have not been used.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, do you have any questions or comments regarding item 118, 2023?
Mr. President.
Mr. Wallenzack.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Roman, in the snapshot audit agreement under section 2, where we talk about fees, where they get 50% of any costs recovered, 12 times the service elimination savings, and 12 times any cost reduction savings. What if we only have like 6 months left on a service contract?
That is a great question. That, in that situation, I would think we would just not, it's only if we implement what they say. So if there's only 6 months left, we would say, okay, we're not gonna do that, and we'll just correct it on the next contract.
Okay, so if they find something that we are under no obligation to follow their findings.
Correct. Yeah, it's only if we decide to have them go forward with it.
Okay,
So
thank
if
you.
we-
Thank you, Mr. Walczak. Thank you, Mr. Roman.
President,
Mr. Reeves, Mr. Reeves?
Thank you. So that's if we act upon what they've given us, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 118, 2023 as ordinance 118, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with the Spyglass Group LLC to analyze telecommunication services and seek cost recovery, service elimination, and cost reduction recommendations.
Council,
Mr. President.
Mr. Walczak?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for passage of ordinance number 118 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Walczak.
Second,
Second by Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak.
Yes.
Mrs. Paula,
yes,
Mr. Zale.
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 118, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item for consideration is item 119, 2023, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman. And I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to obtain another water line easement for the Seaman Road water line replacement project. This is probably our second to last. Hopefully, we'll have another one in a week. But the description of this easement and the cost is included in Exhibit A. It is a very small easement. It's really needed to relocate a storm sewer that is in way of the water line alignment. But nonetheless, it is an easement needed for the project. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions on item 119? Hearing none, I will assign item 119 as ordinance 119, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and director of public service to enter into an agreement with First Baptist Church of Oregon for the acquisition of a permanent easement for the water line replacement program, Seaman Road, Norton Road, and Wynn Road project, and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish?
I move for passage of ordinance 119 of 2023 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
second,
Second by Ms. Paula. Thank you, Ms. Paula. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
yes,
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 119, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item for consideration is item 120, 2023, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Law Director Melissa Pepora. Ms. Pepora, can you talk to both 120 and 121, basically?
I can. Thank you, Mr. President.
I know, I'll refer to the chief if you want, but they're the same thing, correct? Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Pepora.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding the first one, it would be an agreement with the Oregon Municipal Court to provide criminal justice information through Norris, which is a Northwest Ohio Regional Information System, as well as the Criminal Records Management application. This system also applies to the Oregon Police Division. These are annual agreements that both the Police Division and the Oregon Municipal Court enter into. With regards to the Oregon Municipal Court, the cost has gone down. Last year, the cost for entering into this agreement was $52,750. And as you will see, this year, it's gone down to $43,981. The reason for this decrease is the Oregon Municipal Court no longer utilizes Norris for its probation software. They're utilizing a new software, which is less than $2,000 per year. So there is a cost saving with regards to the Oregon Municipal Court. With regards to the police division, if Chief Began wants to speak on that a little bit further as far as if there's been any changes in cost.
Yep, thank you. I believe the costs are the same as from last year. It's $32,750. We're going to be using the same applications and processes within there. That's necessary for the normal operation of the department.
Did you say that's what you paid last year?
I believe it was exactly the same as last year.
Okay. Why is there, Ms. Pepora, why is there a difference between the court's uses of this and the police department's uses of this? Do they use more applications of this than the police department does?
So, Mr. President, the court's application utilizes more.
Okay,
They have decreased that since they no longer will be utilizing the Norris system for their probation department.
right.
So that is the difference why the cost, there still is a higher cost because they utilize it for different applications, but it has decreased from last year.
Had we not gone to the 911 system, would the police departments cost more because you'd be using more applications than you use now?
No.
No?
they-
No?
No, sir. They are the same things that we used when we had in-house dispatch, the same programs. It's property management, the ReportWise system, so the online reporting, or the computer reporting, CRS, which is a computer records management system. There's been no changes in regard to that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Ms. Pepora. Council, any questions or comments regarding item 120 or 121? Hearing none, I will assign item 1, 2023 as ordinance 1, 2023 and ask Ms. Ralston to read it in the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, CJCC, One Government Center, Suite 1720, Toledo, Ohio, to provide criminal justice information service through the Northwest Ohio Information Services, Norris, and records management support for the Oregon Municipal Court for the period of January 1, 2024 through December 31st of 2024.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move for passage of ordinance 120 of 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallenczak. Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Ms. Ralston, would you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 1, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. I will assign item 121, 2023 as ordinance 121, 2023 and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, CJCC, One Government Center, Suite 1720, Toledo, Ohio, to provide criminal justice information service through the Northwest Ohio Regional Information Systems, Norris, and records management support for the police division for the period of January 1 of 2024 through December 31st, 2024.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula.
I move for passage of ordinance 121 of 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallenczak. Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Ms. Ralston, will you take a roll call vote of council on ordinance 121?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 121, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Council, that does conclude our business for this meeting. I will now move to the mayor's report. And since the mayor is not here, I will ask you for some appointments and such as that the mayor would. The first one is an appointment to boards and commissions. You're requesting your concurrence in the following appointment of Matt Sapara to the Lucas County Board of Health as Oregon's representative for the next 3-year term. Our previous representative to the board has decided not to renew at this time. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I'd like to concur with the mayor of the appointment of Matt Sapara to the Lucas County Board of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, thank you, council. Mr. Matt Saparro will represent us with the Lucas County Board of Health. Second, we will go to the Department of Streets. Lieutenant or Superintendent is requesting the following individuals be hired for the summer in seasonal help to work in the street division. The individuals will be assigned to the cemeteries and street departments with an effective hire date of August 29th, 2023. This person is Utility Worker 1, Classification 3, Annalisa Claus of 3842 Talmadge Road, Step 2, at a rate of $15.15 an hour. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I'd like to concur with the mayor for the appointment of Annalisa Claus effective August 29, 2023.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none. Thank you, council. And Lisa Claus will be appointed to cemeteries and street department. Next is a employee payroll classification change request. The Oregon Parks and Recreation Division would like to recommend the following for the approval of the following individuals to the job descriptions and rates listed below with an effective date of August 28th, 2023. This is from concession worker classification 1, step 2 to concession shift supervisor classification 3, step 1. All individuals will have a pay rate of $15.25 per hour. This will be for Jessica Joyce of 1757 Spring Forest Drive in Oregon, Julia Joyce, 1757 Spring Forest Drive in Oregon, Jocelyn Jersky, 1102 Heritage Lane, Oregon, and Brooklyn Smith, 2957 Camelot Drive in Oregon. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move to concur with the classifications upgrades, the change request for Jessica Joyce, Julia Joyce, Jocelyn Jersky, and Brooklyn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Council, are there any objections? Thank you. Okay, from the fire department, from Chief Clayton O'Brien. Due to recent changes in firefighter 2 job description, Blake Heilman has completed all requirements to move from firefighter 1 to firefighter 2. He's requesting your approval of Blake Heilman, who is currently a firefighter 1, pay step 3 to be appointed to firefighter 2, pay step 3 of the IAFF Local 4093 contract with an hourly rate of $29.83, which is $77,558.78 per year, effective August 18th, 2023. Council.
Mr. President.
Ms. Paula.
I move to concur with the mayor's appointment of Blake Heilman from firefighter 1 to firefighter 2.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Thank you. Second is a fire personnel resignation. Please accept the resignation of Craig Duncan, employee number 2545, effective July 27, 2023. Craig was recently hired by the City of Toledo Fire Department for a full-time position. It is his intent to return on a volunteer basis after he has completed the Fire Academy at Toledo. We will appoint him to the part-time fire department at that time. Council.
Mr. President.
Ms. Paula.
I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the resignation of Craig Duncan effective July 27, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Faloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Thank you. Next, I'll move to Mr. Major.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Ms. Pepora.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Pepora. Mr. Roman.
Just one item, Mr. President. We sent out emails earlier today and found out last week that CSX is going to repair the Pickle Road crossing and the Oakdale crossing, which we've been bugging them for a good year and a half. So hopefully it works out well and works, but it's something we've been waiting for a while. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Mr. President?
Mr. Walenzak.
Can I ask Mr. Roman a question? on
You
that?
may.
Mr. Roman, we had discussed if they were going to repair that Pickle Road crossing, we were going to abandon the Oakdale. Are we going to abandon that? Or
No.
It's a repair on both of them then?
Yeah, Mr. President, if I could, and we evaluated that, and we did seek public input on that. And the more, all the input we received was to not close Oakdale. And there's literally almost very little accidents at that crossing. And we feel like if we would have closed Oakdale, we would have needed a turn lane for Sunshine at Woodville, which would be a higher cost to us. And I think in the end, it wasn't worth it. I think we struggled with that. And I think in the end, it was better to stick to our guns and keep Oakdale open.
Did we ever do a traffic count or anything to?
We did.
How many cars a day pass through that?
There's actually, it was 2,000 to 3,000 on
kidding.
Sunshine, and that would double. It would double. So and then also to put in a right turn lane, you'd have to relocate an Edison pole. You have to buy right away.
I'm not disputing. what
No,
you
no,
did. I was
but
just-
but in the deal, in the original offer from CSX was, hey, we'll do a full rubber matted crossing at Pickle Road by closing Oakdale, no cost to you whatsoever. But if you think about it, with the increased traffic on Sunshine, there would be a cost to us. I think in the end, it's like, no, you should maintain your tracks because that's in the Ohio Revised Code to do so.
Well, are they going to do the matted repair like they would, or is it
Yeah,
just
they-
a general repair?
They are resetting the tracks and doing a full repair, but it won't be a rubber matted brand new crossing, but it will have an asphalt and it'll have the wood timbers just like they've done in the past. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak. Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Reeves.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Drake.
I got a question to Mr. Roman. I read the two articles that Jill sent out today, and I noticed both emails said there will be no signed detours.
That's correct.
I can see Oakdale maybe. I've never seen a semi in Oakdale, but I know on Pickle Road between the tracks, Wheeling and Woodville Road, there's a lot of semis that go in and get fuel or whatever.
Yep.
So are they gonna have like a road closed sign at each
Well,
end?
There will be signage for the closure of the rail and we may even leave the blue light on for Pickle. But for the most part, most of the trucks that use that area, I have haul routes that use Woodville to Wheeling. And they're not really supposed to be using Pickle at all. Okay, and that's a problem I have, I think, with some of the Michigan loaded trucks. And that's a subject for council, by the way, so I'm glad you brought it up, Mr. Drake. One thing I want to look at is weight restrictions for Pickle. I think it's something we need to look at. I think Woodville to Wheeling was rebuilt for Michigan loads, and there's really no reason to use Pickle. You have AA Booze that's there and the refinery that could also get permits of their own to use Pickle to some degree, which would be just local traffic to them. But I think we need to look at weight restricting Pickle. But I know there'll be road closure signs for Pickle, but we weren't gonna post it on, it would be Woodville to Wheeling. A lot of people will find their path because they're usually dealing with a train crossing Pickle. So, but I can check with that to see if anything else is needed for that.
And also, the one on, the other one,
Oakdale.
what's that?
Oakdale.
Oakdale, yeah. a lot of vehicles turn off Woodville, up the hill, down the hill, take a
There'll be
right.
closed, yeah, you're right, using Cross Street, concerned about that. So there should be signage at Sunshine to say road closed ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Reeves.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Drake.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Wallensack.
No report this evening, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Mr. Wallensack. Mr. Davish.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Pauloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really want to take my hat off to the police and fire for the weekend of the German American Festival. Do we have any numbers yet? No numbers yet? Of how many or how many emergencies were needed there or anything?
Actually, when I spoke to Battalion Chief Pertee today, he said that for the amount of number of people that were there, the actual incidences were not as much as what it was in years past. We believe that we had 2 or 3 on Friday, again, another 2 or 3 on Saturday, and maybe 1 on Sunday. So very.
With all those people there, 5 the whole weekend?
Yeah, so
Pretty
very,
amazing.
very low, as far as that. Now, I think it was on Friday that, it was either Friday or Saturday, all 3, there was 3 of them at the same time. But otherwise, it nearly wasn't as much as what it has been in the past as for our services, which is a good thing.
I'd also like to thank the police department for keeping an eye on the mud detail. That was great. Thank you, Chief Spangler, really. Also too, I'd like to say that today, or not today, this year is 5 years for ozone. If you just want to know that information, 5 years ago is when we put in ozone for our water treatment. I was at the water treatment plant last week and it looks just as new as it did 5 years ago. So it's funny how time flies with that. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Mr. Horniak.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. And I have nothing for my standing committee. We have no one signed in to speak this evening, so I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.